Long before human memory, before written history, and even before familiar animals shaped the landscapes we know today, the Earth produced a creature that redefined the meaning of size, power, and dominance in the natural world. Titanoboa was the largest snake ever to exist, not just slightly bigger than modern snakes, but so immense that it stretched the biological limits of what a snake could be. Understanding why Titanoboa holds this title requires moving beyond simple measurements and into the deep interaction between climate, evolution, and survival on a planet recovering from catastrophe. Titanoboa lived roughly 60 million years ago during the Paleocene epoch, a time when the Earth was still healing from the mass extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs. Many people imagine this period as quiet or transitional, but in reality, it was a time of intense biological experimentation. Ecosystems were unstable, temperatures were unusually high, and life was rapidly adapting to fill vacant ecological roles. In this environment, Titanoboa did not merely survive, it thrived. Fossil evidence shows that this snake reached lengths of more than 40 feet and weighed well over a metric ton, making it longer than a school bus and heavier than most modern land predators. To truly grasp how extraordinary this was, it helps to compare Titanoboa to the largest snakes alive today. The green anaconda, often considered the heaviest living snake, rarely exceeds 20 feet in length and weighs a few hundred kilograms at most. Even at its largest, an anaconda would have been less than half the length of Titanoboa and far less massive. The reticulated python, known for its length, can grow long but remains relatively slender. Titanoboa combined extreme length with immense thickness, giving it crushing power on a scale that no modern snake can approach. This enormous size was not an accident or an evolutionary mistake. It was the direct result of environmental conditions that no longer exist on Earth today. Snakes are ectothermic animals, meaning they rely on external heat to regulate their body temperature. Their metabolism, digestion, and ability to move efficiently all depend on warmth. During the Paleocene, average temperatures in tropical regions were significantly higher than they are now, with little seasonal variation. The air was thick with humidity, and the land was covered in vast rainforests and swamp systems. This constant warmth allowed reptiles to grow larger without suffering the metabolic limitations that would restrict them in cooler climates. Titanoboa's body itself tells the story of its size. Fossilized vertebrae recovered from coal mines in present-day Colombia reveal bones far larger than those of any known snake. Paleontologists did not find a complete skeleton, but snakes leave behind highly distinctive vertebrae, and by comparing these fossils to modern snake anatomy, scientists were able to reconstruct Titanoboa's overall dimensions with remarkable accuracy. Each vertebra suggests not only length, but muscle mass, body thickness, and overall strength. When these data were combined, the result was a picture of a serpent so large that it fundamentally altered how scientists think about reptilian growth limits. Size alone, however, does not make Titanoboa significant. What makes it truly remarkable is what that size allowed it to do. Titanoboa was almost certainly an apex predator, meaning it sat at the very top of its food chain. There is no evidence that adult Titanoboas had natural predators. Once fully grown, nothing else in their environment was capable of overpowering them. This position of dominance shaped the entire ecosystem around them. Smaller predators would have avoided areas where Titanoboa hunted, while prey species would have evolved behaviors to minimize the risk of encountering such a massive ambush predator. The structure of Titanoboa's body suggests it was especially well adapted to a semi-aquatic lifestyle. The region where its fossils were found was once a network of warm, slow-moving rivers and swamps. In water, Titanoboa's immense mass would have been easier to support, reducing the strain of gravity. This environment also provided access to large prey, including giant fish and early crocodile-like reptiles. Instead of relying on speed, Titanoboa likely used stealth and patience, remaining nearly motionless before striking with overwhelming force. Its method of killing prey was likely similar to that of modern boas and pythons, but on a much larger scale. Constriction works by cutting off blood flow rather than simply stopping breathing. With Titanoboa's size and strength, this process would have been incredibly fast and effective. A single coil from its body could generate enough pressure to incapacitate even large animals in seconds. The energy required to maintain such a massive body would have been enormous, but the abundance of prey in its environment made this possible. Calling Titanoboa the largest snake ever is not just a statement about physical dimensions. It is a reflection of a unique moment in Earth's history. After the dinosaurs disappeared, ecological niches were suddenly empty. Large predators were gone, and ecosystems were reorganizing. Mammals were still relatively small and had not yet evolved into dominant large predators. Reptiles, already well adapted to warm environments, were in a position to expand into these vacant roles. Titanoboa represents the peak of this reptilian dominance, a time when snakes, not mammals, could reach sizes rivaling the largest carnivores of later eras. The sheer size of Titanoboa also provides scientists with a powerful tool for understanding ancient climates. Because ectothermic animals are so sensitive to temperature, their maximum body size is closely tied to environmental heat. By estimating Titanoboa's size, researchers can infer how warm the Paleocene tropics must have been. These estimates suggest temperatures several degrees higher than today's averages, reinforcing the idea that Earth's climate has fluctuated dramatically over geological time. In this way, Titanoboa serves as both a biological record and a climate archive. There is also an important lesson in the fact that Titanoboa no longer exists. As Earth's climate gradually cooled after the Paleocene, the conditions that supported such massive reptiles disappeared. Lower temperatures meant slower metabolism, reduced digestion efficiency, and ultimately smaller maximum body sizes. Titanoboa did not vanish because it was poorly adapted, but because the world changed around it. Its extinction reminds us that even the most powerful creatures are vulnerable to environmental shifts beyond their control. The idea of the largest snake ever to exist naturally captures human imagination, but Titanoboa is not just a curiosity or a prehistoric monster. It challenges our assumptions about what life is capable of under the right conditions. It forces us to reconsider the limits we place on animal size and to recognize that those limits are not fixed, but fluid, shaped by climate and ecology. What seems impossible today may have been ordinary in another era. Titanoboa also reshapes how we think about fear and familiarity. Modern snakes already inspire strong emotional reactions in humans, often rooted in instinct and cultural memory. Imagining a snake twice as long as any alive today triggers something deeper, a reminder that the natural world has always had the potential to produce creatures far beyond human control. Yet Titanoboa was not a monster in the moral sense. It was simply an animal following the rules of its environment, perfectly adapted to the world it inhabited. In many ways, Titanoboa stands as a symbol of extremes: extreme heat, extreme size, extreme power, but these extremes were balanced, stable, and sustainable for millions of years. That balance was eventually lost, not through sudden disaster, but through gradual change. As temperatures dropped and ecosystems evolved, the age of giant snakes came to an end. Smaller, more adaptable species took their place, and the memory of Titanoboa was buried beneath layers of sediment, waiting to be rediscovered. When scientists finally uncovered its remains, they did more than identify a new species. They uncovered proof that Earth's past was not just different, but profoundly more intense than the present. Titanoboa's status as the largest snake ever is not a trivial record. It is a window into a world where nature pushed boundaries that seem unimaginable today. Its existence reminds us that life on Earth has never been static, and that what we consider normal is only a snapshot in a vast and ever-changing story. Understanding Titanoboa, especially its unmatched size, deepens our appreciation of evolution's power and flexibility. It shows that life responds directly to the conditions it is given, growing larger, stronger, or more restrained as circumstances demand. Titanoboa was the ultimate expression of a warm, fertile, and predator-rich world. In acknowledging it as the largest snake ever to exist, we are also acknowledging the extraordinary forces that shaped our planet long before humans ever appeared. The existence of Titanoboa is not just evidence of a giant snake that once ruled ancient swamps. It is one of the clearest biological messages from Earth's deep past, telling us that the planet's climate was once radically different from what we experience today. Titanoboa could not have existed in the modern world. Its sheer size, weight, and lifestyle demand environmental conditions that no longer exist. By understanding this creature, scientists are not simply reconstructing a lost animal. They are reconstructing an entire climate system that shaped life in extraordinary ways. Around 60 million years ago, during the Paleocene epoch, Earth was a far warmer planet. This was not a brief heat wave or a short-term fluctuation, but a long, lasting global condition. Carbon dioxide levels were much higher, polar ice caps did not exist, and temperature differences between the equator and the poles were far smaller than they are today. Tropical regions, where Titanoboa lived, were intensely hot and humid year-round. There were no cold seasons to slow biological processes, no temperature drops to limit growth. For cold-blooded animals like snakes, this constant heat was not just comfortable, it was essential. Unlike mammals and birds, reptiles do not generate their own body heat. Their internal temperature is controlled by the environment around them. This means that climate directly limits how large they can grow. In cooler environments, a very large snake would struggle to warm its body, digest food efficiently, or move with enough speed to hunt successfully. But in the Paleocene tropics, warmth was abundant and reliable. Titanoboa's massive body could absorb and retain heat easily, allowing it to function at a size that would be impossible today. The fossils of Titanoboa were discovered in what is now Colombia, a region that sits near the equator. Today, this area is already warm and humid, but in the Paleocene it was even hotter. Dense rainforests covered the land, and vast swamp systems dominated the landscape. These wetlands trapped heat and moisture, creating an environment where temperatures rarely dropped. This setting acted like a natural incubator for reptiles, encouraging slow metabolism, efficient digestion, and extended growth over long lifespans. Titanoboa's size itself became a scientific tool. Paleontologists realized that because snakes are ectothermic, their maximum body size can be used to estimate past temperatures. By calculating how large Titanoboa was and comparing it to the physiological limits of modern snakes, scientists could work backward to estimate how hot the environment must have been. The conclusion was striking. Average annual temperatures in the region were likely several degrees Celsius higher than today, possibly reaching levels that would feel unbearable to modern humans. This discovery reshaped climate science. Before Titanoboa, estimates of Paleocene temperatures relied heavily on chemical data from rocks and ocean sediments. Titanoboa added biological confirmation. Its body was living proof that the planet was warmer, not just on paper, but in a way that directly shaped life. The snake's existence validated climate models and showed that extreme warmth was not only possible, but stable over millions of years. The warmth of the Paleocene did more than allow Titanoboa to grow large. It reshaped entire ecosystems. High temperatures increased plant growth, leading to dense forests and abundant food sources. These plants supported large populations of herbivores, fish, and smaller predators, which in turn supported massive apex predators like Titanoboa. Energy flowed efficiently through the ecosystem, allowing large animals to survive without exhausting available resources. The atmosphere itself was different. Higher carbon dioxide levels enhanced the greenhouse effect, trapping heat close to the surface. Oceans were warmer, which influenced rainfall patterns and maintained constant humidity in tropical regions. Rivers and swamps did not dry out seasonally. They remained full year-round. For a semi-aquatic predator like Titanoboa, this meant consistent access to water and prey, further supporting its enormous size. What makes Titanoboa especially important is that it demonstrates how climate controls biological limits. There is nothing in snake genetics that suddenly allowed Titanoboa to become gigantic. Modern snakes share much of the same basic biology. The difference lies almost entirely in environmental conditions. When the climate allowed it, snakes grew larger. When the climate cooled, those sizes became impossible to maintain. Titanoboa is proof that evolution responds directly to temperature, sometimes in dramatic and unexpected ways. As Earth gradually cooled after the Paleocene, the conditions that supported Titanoboa disappeared. Temperatures dropped, seasonal variation increased, and ecosystems changed. Large reptiles became less efficient, while mammals, with their ability to regulate body temperature internally, gained an advantage. Over time, mammals grew larger and more diverse, while giant reptiles declined. Titanoboa's extinction was not sudden or violent, but slow and inevitable, driven by a cooling world. This story carries powerful implications for the present. Modern climate change is often discussed in abstract terms, measured in fractions of degrees and future projections. Titanoboa reminds us that even small changes in average temperature can have enormous biological consequences. A warmer world does not simply mean discomfort for humans. It fundamentally reshapes what kinds of life can exist and how large they can grow. Scientists studying Titanoboa often point out that if global temperatures were to rise significantly and remain high for long periods, reptiles could once again expand their size range. While we are unlikely to see snakes the size of Titanoboa anytime soon, the principle remains the same. Climate sets the boundaries of life. Titanoboa lived at the extreme edge of those boundaries, made possible only by a planet that was far hotter than today. Titanoboa also challenges the idea that Earth's current climate is normal or permanent. In reality, Earth has spent much of its history in states very different from the present. Ice ages and greenhouse periods have alternated over millions of years. The world of Titanoboa was not an anomaly, but one chapter in a long story of planetary change. Understanding this helps scientists place modern climate shifts into a broader historical context, while also recognizing how rapidly life can respond. There is something deeply humbling about this realization. Titanoboa was not adapted to human civilization, cities, or agriculture. It was adapted to heat, water, and dense jungle. When those conditions faded, so did the snake. This reminds us that no species, no matter how powerful, is immune to environmental change. Survival is not about strength alone, but about compatibility with the planet's conditions. The existence of Titanoboa also highlights how climate influences fear and imagination. To modern humans, a 40-foot snake feels monstrous and unnatural. But in the Paleocene, it was simply another product of a warm, fertile world. What we consider terrifying today may have been ordinary in another climate regime. Titanoboa forces us to confront how our perception of normal is shaped by the narrow slice of Earth's history we inhabit. In studying Titanoboa, scientists are not just looking backward. They are learning how temperature, biology, and ecosystems interact on a grand scale. The snake's fossils are warnings and lessons, reminding us that Earth's climate has the power to reshape life in ways that can seem unbelievable until the evidence lies before us in stone. Titanoboa existed because the Earth allowed it to exist. Its massive body was sculpted by heat, humidity, and abundance. When those conditions vanished, so did the giant snake. This simple truth makes Titanoboa one of the most important creatures ever discovered, not because it was the largest snake, but because it proves how radically different our planet once was and how profoundly climate controls the boundaries of life itself. Titanoboa did far more than astonish scientists with its size. It forced a complete rethinking of how evolution, ecosystems, and predator dominance operate after mass extinction events. Its existence shows that evolution does not follow a single predictable path, and that the balance of power in nature can shift dramatically depending on environmental conditions. In the world Titanoboa inhabited, the rules that define dominance today were rewritten, and reptiles, not mammals, became the supreme rulers of their ecosystems. After the extinction of the dinosaurs, Earth entered a period of ecological uncertainty. Many dominant species had vanished, leaving behind empty niches and unstable food webs. This moment could have favored many different evolutionary outcomes, but climate played a decisive role in shaping what followed. The planet was warm, humid, and rich in resources, conditions that favored ectothermic animals. Reptiles, already well adapted to heat, were suddenly positioned to expand into roles once occupied by dinosaurs. Titanoboa represents the most extreme result of this opportunity. Evolution often rewards traits that are useful under specific conditions rather than traits that seem universally superior. In Titanoboa's case, intelligence, speed, and social behavior were not necessary for dominance. Size, strength, and stealth were enough. In a warm, swampy environment filled with abundant prey, growing larger provided clear advantages. A massive body allowed Titanoboa to overpower almost any animal it encountered, conserve energy by feeding less frequently, and deter potential rivals without needing to engage in constant conflict. This challenges the common assumption that evolution always trends toward complexity or intelligence. Titanoboa did not evolve advanced cognitive abilities or social structures. Instead, it evolved an extreme physical form perfectly suited to its environment. Its success demonstrates that evolution is not about progress in a human sense, but about efficiency and survival within specific ecological boundaries. The ecosystem Titanoboa lived in was shaped by its presence. As an apex predator, it influenced the behavior, distribution, and evolution of countless other species. Prey animals would have evolved heightened sensitivity to vibrations and movement in water. Smaller predators likely avoided areas where Titanoboa was active, reducing competition and altering hunting patterns. Even plant life may have been indirectly affected, as changes in animal behavior influenced grazing, movement, and nutrient distribution. Titanoboa's dominance also reveals that mammalian supremacy was not inevitable after the dinosaurs disappeared. Mammals at the time were mostly small, nocturnal, and limited in size. They had not yet developed the large bodies and specialized adaptations that would later allow them to dominate terrestrial ecosystems. In the warm Paleocene world, being warm-blooded was not a major advantage. Reptiles could achieve large sizes without the high energy costs required by mammals to maintain internal body heat. This temporary dominance of reptiles shows that evolutionary success is often temporary and context-dependent. Titanoboa ruled its environment not because it was inherently superior to all other life forms, but because the conditions favored its biology. When those conditions changed, its dominance faded. This highlights a key principle of evolution. Survival is not about being the strongest in absolute terms, but about being the best fit for the moment. The fossil record of Titanoboa also provides insight into how ecosystems recover after mass extinctions. Rather than returning immediately to familiar structures, ecosystems can enter entirely new configurations. The Paleocene world did not simply reset to a pre-dinosaur state. Instead, it produced novel combinations of species and interactions. Giant snakes replacing giant dinosaurs as apex predators is one of the most striking examples of this unpredictability. Titanoboa's role as a top predator would have stabilized its ecosystem in some ways while destabilizing it in others. Apex predators often regulate prey populations, preventing overgrazing and promoting biodiversity. At the same time, their presence can limit the spread of other predators, concentrating power at the top of the food chain. Titanoboa's overwhelming size suggests it faced little competition, creating a predator hierarchy with few rivals. This concentration of dominance likely influenced evolutionary pressures across the ecosystem. Species that could avoid detection, reproduce quickly, or exploit niches outside Titanoboa's hunting range would have had better chances of survival. Over time, this would lead to a diverse array of adaptations, all shaped indirectly by the presence of a single massive predator. Titanoboa also blurs the line between what we consider normal and extreme in evolutionary terms. Today, snakes are often viewed as secondary predators, rarely occupying the very top of food chains. Titanoboa shows that this perception is shaped by our modern environment, not by any inherent limitation of snakes. Given the right conditions, snakes can become the most powerful predators in their ecosystems. The rise and fall of Titanoboa's dominance also mirrors broader patterns in Earth's history. Time and again, life has produced giants when conditions allow it. Giant insects in oxygen, rich atmospheres, giant dinosaurs in warm Mesozoic climates, and giant snakes in the Paleocene all reflect the same underlying principle. Evolution pushes toward extremes when environmental constraints are relaxed, yet these extremes are fragile. As climates shift and resources change, giant forms become liabilities rather than advantages. Large bodies require stable conditions and abundant energy. When those conditions disappear, smaller, more adaptable species gain the upper hand. Titanoboa's extinction illustrates this transition clearly. As temperatures cooled and ecosystems transformed, the giant snake could no longer sustain its dominance. Studying Titanoboa reshapes how scientists think about the future as well as the past. It suggests that evolutionary pathways can change rapidly when environments shift. It warns against assuming that current ecosystems are stable, or that dominant species will remain dominant indefinitely. The same forces that allowed Titanoboa to rise could, under different circumstances, reshape modern ecosystems in unexpected ways. There is also a philosophical dimension to Titanoboa's story. Humans often view themselves as the ultimate evolutionary success, yet Titanoboa ruled its world without technology, language, or culture. Its dominance was purely biological, rooted in physical adaptation and environmental harmony. This reminds us that intelligence and culture are not the only measures of success in nature. Titanoboa forces us to confront the idea that evolution has no final goal. There is no predetermined endpoint where one group permanently replaces all others. Instead, life continually experiments, responding to changing conditions with new forms and strategies. Titanoboa was one such experiment, an extreme but successful solution to the challenges of its time. By reshaping our understanding of evolution, ecosystems, and predator dominance, Titanoboa becomes more than a prehistoric curiosity. It becomes a lesson in humility, reminding us that the natural world is capable of producing forms far beyond our expectations when the conditions are right. Its existence challenges linear narratives of progress and highlights the dynamic, ever-changing nature of life on Earth. In the end, Titanoboa's story is not just about a giant snake ruling ancient swamps. It is about how life reorganizes itself after catastrophe, how dominance shifts with climate and opportunity, and how evolution continuously explores the limits of possibility. Titanoboa stood at the center of this process, a living symbol of a world where reptiles reclaimed the throne and rewrote the rules of survival. Titanoboa's dominance becomes most striking when viewed through the lens of fossil evidence, because the story of this creature is written not in legend but in stone. The remains discovered in northern South America reveal a predator that ruled its environment with unmatched authority, and they allow scientists to reconstruct how Titanoboa lived, hunted, and controlled the ancient ecosystems it inhabited. Through these fossils, Titanoboa emerges not as a mystery monster, but as a clearly defined apex predator whose influence shaped the world around it. The discovery itself was unexpected. In the early 2000s, paleontologists working in a coal mine in present-day Colombia began uncovering unusually large fossilized vertebrae. At first, these bones did not seem to belong to any known animal. They were too large for crocodiles and far too massive for any modern snake species. As more fossils were recovered, a pattern emerged. These vertebrae shared distinctive features found only in snakes, yet their size surpassed anything previously recorded. This was the first clue that scientists were looking at something extraordinary. Snakes are especially identifiable through their vertebrae because their spines are highly specialized. Each vertebra supports powerful muscles used for movement and constriction. By comparing Titanoboa's vertebrae to those of living snakes, researchers could estimate the snake's total length, body mass, and even aspects of its posture. The results confirmed that Titanoboa was not only long, but exceptionally thick and muscular, built for overpowering large prey. The location of the fossils added critical context. The coal mine where Titanoboa was found was once part of an ancient tropical rainforest filled with rivers, swamps, and dense vegetation. Coal forms from plant material compressed over millions of years, indicating lush plant life and wet conditions. This environment would have supported a wide range of animals, from large fish to early crocodilians, providing abundant food for a massive predator. Fossil evidence suggests that Titanoboa was not a rare or isolated species. Multiple vertebrae from different individuals were found, indicating that these giant snakes were established members of the ecosystem rather than unusual anomalies. This means Titanoboa was not a single evolutionary experiment, but a successful species that persisted long enough to leave a measurable imprint on the fossil record. The shape of the vertebrae offers clues about how Titanoboa hunted. The structure suggests strong lateral movement, well suited for swimming and ambush in water. This supports the idea that Titanoboa spent much of its time in rivers and swamps, lying in wait for prey rather than actively pursuing it on land. In such environments, size becomes an overwhelming advantage. Water supports body weight, allowing massive animals to move efficiently while remaining hidden. The prey available in these ecosystems further supports Titanoboa's status as an apex predator. Fossils from the same region include large fish species and early relatives of crocodiles. These animals were formidable in their own right, yet Titanoboa was larger still. There is no fossil evidence of bite marks or injuries on Titanoboa bones that would suggest frequent attacks from other predators. This absence strongly implies that adult Titanoboas faced little to no predation pressure. Apex predators play a crucial role in maintaining ecosystem balance, and Titanoboa would have been no exception. By preying on large animals, it likely prevented any single species from becoming overly dominant. This regulation helps maintain biodiversity, even in ecosystems dominated by a single top predator. Titanoboa's presence would have influenced migration patterns, breeding behavior, and habitat use among prey species, shaping the ecosystem in subtle but far-reaching ways. The sheer size of Titanoboa also meant that it needed to feed less frequently than smaller predators. Large snakes can survive on relatively infrequent meals, especially when those meals are substantial. This feeding strategy would have allowed Titanoboa to conserve energy, reducing the need for constant hunting and minimizing competition with other predators. Such efficiency further reinforces its position at the top of the food chain. Fossil distribution patterns suggest that Titanoboa was well adapted to its environment rather than roaming widely. Its massive size would have made long-distance travel on land difficult, encouraging a lifestyle centered around stable water systems. This territorial stability likely allowed Titanoboa to dominate specific regions completely, creating zones where few other large predators could operate. The absence of rival apex predators in the fossil record of this region is telling. While early crocodilians were present, none appear to have matched Titanoboa in size. Mammals of the time were small and unlikely to pose any threat. This lack of competition suggests a predator hierarchy with Titanoboa firmly at the top, controlling access to resources and shaping the structure of the ecosystem. Fossil evidence also helps explain why Titanoboa eventually disappeared. As geological layers change, they reveal shifts in plant life, water systems, and temperature. Over time, the lush swamps that supported Titanoboa gave way to cooler, drier environments. These changes would have reduced the availability of large aquatic prey and made it harder for such a massive ectothermic predator to survive. What makes Titanoboa's story particularly powerful is how clearly the fossils connect environment, anatomy, and behavior. This is not speculation based on a single bone, but a coherent picture built from multiple lines of evidence. Each vertebra adds detail, reinforcing the conclusion that Titanoboa was perfectly adapted to dominate its world. The fossil record also challenges modern assumptions about predator power. Today, apex predators are often mammals such as big cats or bears. Titanoboa shows that reptiles can occupy this role just as effectively, given the right conditions. Its dominance was not a fluke, but a predictable outcome of a warm climate, abundant resources, and evolutionary opportunity. There is a quiet authority in the fossil evidence of Titanoboa. Unlike dramatic reconstructions or imaginative depictions, the bones themselves speak with scientific certainty. They tell us that a snake once existed that could overpower nearly anything in its environment, that controlled vast swampy territories, and that did so not through speed or intelligence, but through sheer physical presence. Titanoboa's fossils remind us that Earth's history is full of such forgotten rulers. Creatures that once shaped entire ecosystems can vanish completely, leaving behind only fragments of bone and subtle traces in the geological record. The rediscovery of Titanoboa brings one such ruler back into our awareness, forcing us to acknowledge how different the ancient world truly was. In the end, fossil evidence confirms that Titanoboa was not just large, but supreme. It was an apex predator in the truest sense, with no equals and no challengers. Its dominance was written into the very structure of its bones, preserved across millions of years. Through those fossils, we glimpse a world where a giant snake ruled the swamps, silently controlling life and death in a way that seems almost unreal today, yet was once an everyday reality on a much hotter Earth. The story of Titanoboa does not end in the distant past. In many ways, it reaches directly into the present and the future. This ancient snake has become one of the most powerful tools scientists have for understanding how climate change influences animal size, survival, and ecosystem structure. Titanoboa is not only a fossilized giant, but a biological message, preserved across millions of years, showing how deeply life responds to temperature and environmental conditions. By studying it, researchers gain insight into patterns that are already beginning to appear again in the modern world. At its core, Titanoboa teaches a simple but profound lesson. Climate sets the limits of life. The size, behavior, and even existence of many species are controlled by temperature. For cold-blooded animals in particular, environmental heat determines how large they can grow, how fast they can move, and how efficiently they can digest food. Titanoboa reached an extreme size because it lived in an extreme climate. When that climate disappeared, so did the snake. This direct link between temperature and biology is exactly why Titanoboa matters so much today. Modern climate change is often discussed in terms of melting ice caps, rising sea levels, and extreme weather. While these are critical issues, Titanoboa shifts the focus toward biology. It reminds us that climate change is not just about landscapes, but about life itself. As temperatures rise, species do not remain static. They adapt, migrate, shrink, expand, or disappear. Titanoboa represents what happens when warming persists over long periods and fundamentally reshapes ecosystems. Scientists studying Titanoboa use it as a benchmark for understanding how reptiles respond to sustained warmth. Because snakes are ectothermic, their bodies reflect environmental conditions with remarkable accuracy. By analyzing Titanoboa's size and physiology, researchers can model how much warming occurred in the Paleocene and how long it lasted. These models are then compared with modern climate projections to understand potential biological outcomes. One of the most important insights from Titanoboa is that warming does not affect all animals equally. Mammals and birds regulate their own body temperature, giving them some protection against environmental fluctuations. Reptiles, amphibians, and many insects do not have this advantage. As temperatures rise, these animals can experience dramatic changes in growth rates, body size, reproduction, and survival. Titanoboa shows that under prolonged warmth, reptiles can grow far larger than we currently observe. This has direct implications for the modern world. In some regions today, reptiles are already showing changes linked to warming temperatures. Studies have documented altered breeding seasons, expanded ranges, and changes in body size among certain species. While these changes are subtle compared to Titanoboa's scale, they follow the same underlying principle. Climate pushes biology toward new boundaries. Titanoboa also highlights the importance of time. Climate change effects are not always immediate. Titanoboa did not appear overnight. It was the result of long-term stable warmth. Biological OFTE and IMP, ACT of FORC, INGM, ODERNATT, ACK, ING, Siakatuni UNI, T-Ange into CH, ANGE, May TAKE, Costly DEC, ADES, or Frunzel Asalis Sacharies to fully unfold. What we see now may only be the early stages of much larger transformations. Another critical lesson from Titanoboa is that ecosystems reorganize themselves in response to climate. When temperatures rose in the Paleocene, food webs shifted. Reptiles became dominant predators, while mammals remained relatively small. Today, warming could similarly alter predator-prey relationships. Species that thrive in heat may gain advantages, while others decline. Titanoboa's world reminds us that dominance in nature is not fixed. It is shaped by environmental conditions. Titanoboa also serves as a warning about thresholds. There are tipping points beyond which ecosystems change dramatically. In the Paleocene, warmth crossed a threshold that allowed giant reptiles to exist. When temperatures later dropped, another threshold was crossed, and those giants vanished. Modern climate change risks pushing ecosystems past similar thresholds, with unpredictable consequences. Studying Titanoboa helps scientists understand extinction risk as well. Large animals are often more vulnerable to environmental change because they require stable conditions and abundant resources. Titanoboa survived only as long as its environment remained warm and productive. When conditions shifted, its size became a disadvantage. This pattern is seen repeatedly in Earth's history and has clear relevance today, as many large species face heightened extinction risk due to rapid climate shifts. Titanoboa's story also informs conservation strategies. By understanding how climate shaped past ecosystems, scientists can better predict which species are most at risk in a warming world. Reptiles, amphibians, and other ectotherms may experience dramatic changes, both positive and negative, depending on region and habitat. Titanoboa reminds us that climate change does not produce uniform outcomes. It creates winners and losers. There is also a deeper philosophical dimension to Titanoboa's relevance. Humans often view climate change as something that threatens civilization, but Titanoboa reframes it as something that reshapes life itself. The Earth has undergone dramatic climate shifts before, and life has always responded. The question is not whether life will change, but how, and whether humans can adapt alongside it. Titanoboa challenges the comforting idea that the natural world we know is stable. It shows that what we consider normal is temporary. Forests, predators, and entire ecosystems can transform beyond recognition under sustained climate change. This understanding encourages humility and caution, reminding us that human-driven warming could push the planet into conditions not seen for millions of years. The snake also highlights the importance of interdisciplinary science. Titanoboa is studied by paleontologists, climate scientists, biologists, and ecologists alike. Its fossils connect geology, biology, and atmospheric science into a single narrative. This integrated approach is essential for understanding modern climate change, which cannot be fully grasped through any single field alone. Titanoboa's legacy extends into education and public awareness as well. Giant creatures capture attention in a way that abstract data often cannot. By learning about Titanoboa, people can more easily grasp the scale and impact of climate change across Earth's history. It transforms climate science from numbers on a graph into a vivid biological story. There is also an emotional weight to Titanoboa's lesson. The idea that a creature so powerful could vanish because its environment changed reminds us of our own vulnerability. Humans, too, depend on stable conditions. While we are adaptable, we are not immune to environmental change. Titanoboa's extinction is a reminder that dominance does not guarantee survival. Importantly, Titanoboa does not suggest that the future will look exactly like the Paleocene. Earth's systems are complex, and modern climate change is occurring far more rapidly. However, the principles remain the same. Temperature influences biology, ecosystems reorganize in response, and extremes become possible when limits are pushed. By studying Titanoboa, scientists gain a long-term perspective that modern observations alone cannot provide. Instrumental records span only a few centuries, but Titanoboa offers insight across millions of years. This deep time perspective is essential for understanding the full potential consequences of climate change. Titanoboa also reminds us that prevention matters. The Paleocene warming was driven by natural processes over long timescales. Today's warming is happening much faster and is largely driven by human activity. While life may eventually adapt, the transition could be disruptive and destructive, particularly for species unable to adjust quickly. In the end, Titanoboa stands as both a guide and a warning. It shows what life can become under sustained warmth and what can be lost when conditions change. Its massive body, preserved in stone, tells a story that science alone cannot fully convey without imagination. It invites us to look beyond our immediate experience and recognize that climate has always been one of the most powerful forces shaping life on Earth. Studying Titanoboa is not about reviving fear of giant snakes. It is about understanding our planet's potential futures. It teaches us that climate change is not an abstract threat, but a biological force capable of reshaping the living world in profound ways. By listening to the message Titanoboa carries from the deep past, we gain knowledge that may help us navigate the uncertain climate future ahead.